now, I think. It says it's going live. I'm live here, so I'm going to just see if I can figure out this link and stuff here. There's got to be some way to do something. There doesn't seem to be any options at all in this live stream. I cannot find a single option. Oh crap, now what have I done? Am I live? Does anybody know, am I live here? Okay.
I don't see you. I still see the screen.
All right.
Your picture.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I'm going to try and find out if there's some way to get you in here, Janice. Janice is waiting. Janice, do you see anything or hear anything there?
I don't think so. I see your picture, but that's it.
There's got to be a way to get you to join this thing here. Why would YouTube have a streaming thing and no way to join it? Does anybody know, is there a way to oh, they're hearing you, Janice, but that's through my speaker and my microphone here, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I can't even see you live.
You may have to, I'm going to try to find the link here. I'm seeing stream name, auto dedicator, blah, 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 a bunch of junk I have no idea it means. Backup servers, whatever, bunch of techno stuff. Analytics, view activity, all kinds of useless information for me here.
Yeah.
Janice is just seeing, okay, if anybody's listening to me here, just put in, if you know how to add somebody to a live stream. I don't know whether YouTube's changed this and it's just not possible anymore. I know somebody's saying Streamlabs. I have no idea what that is or how we even get into it.
I can see you.
You can see me.
I can see you now. Yeah, you are live for sure.
Okay. But I mean, surely YouTube has not cut out the possibility to add somebody into a live stream. Is this really seriously possible? That YouTube actually eliminated the possibility to bring a second person into a live stream. Is that what I'm supposed to understand by this? Anybody in the comments can write in what you say. Is this the truth? Is this hopeless to get Janice in? On air is gone, Michael Keller says. That I take that to mean that Hangouts is gone, means that nobody can get into a live stream. I hate to say it, you guys, all you watchers out here, but I have an absolute terrible dislike, verging on hatred of YouTube. The only tech company in the world that gives you things and then takes them all away one at a time every year. Somebody says no sound now. Are you hearing me, Janice?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess we're out of luck here. I'm going to try and do I'm going to try and open up a, what's that app we use there? Zoom, Janice?
Yeah, Zoom. We've used that before.
Okay, Michael Keller keeps bringing up Streamlabs. Michael, just write in the comments, is this something hard to do or is it just cut and paste something into a link somewhere? You could go for the stream. We can hear her, Janice, but not see her. Okay, they can hear you, they say here, Janice. I don't know how well. Are you hearing Janice well? How's the sound quality? Is there no problem with hearing Janice? Anybody in the comments? Okay, Streamlabs, blah, blah, blah. Tried to figure it out, but failed. Okay, so that's not going to work very well tonight. We can hear her fine. We need to see her, they're saying here. Have her speak. Janice, say something for me, would you?
Hello, Steve. let's fix all these problems.
Yeah, no, I think we're out of luck on that one. But get her to do.
Dear. Well, maybe we can have a short conversation now. If people can hear, we can talk for 15 minutes and we can try to do it again next week.
Okay, let's do that now, because if we start messing around, it'll be a long time before we get this going. I'm going to just turn up my volume on my speakers so that you're picked up as well as possible, because I think you're being picked up, Janice, through my microphone that's sitting right here. People can see.
I can't think it would be by any other means.
Yeah. Okay, I think... no, we can't. I don't know what that no, we can't says there. Okay, so we had a list of topics we were going to start about, Janice. So maybe you can update us on where you see the Fiamengo file going in the next few topics here.
Okay, I'm finding it odd to speak because I can hear this lag, and I don't know whether I should turn your sound off. Maybe I will do that actually. I'm just going to turn you down so I can't hear you at all. Okay. Can you still hear me? Can everyone still hear me?
I hear you, but if I don't think you can hear me, can you now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
I was hearing you both on the phone and there on the screen. So this is better. Well,
whoops. Oh, shoot. I've lost Janice. That's the problem there with Janice. Okay, hold on one second here. Let me see if I can get you back. Damn. Now I know what was going on. I had Janice on, for all you folks leaving the boomers. Yeah, it's a boomer problem. For all you folks watching out there, I just learned by the hard way that you were hearing Janice because I had her on a phone call through my computer. So I'm going to just get her back on here. Bear with me a second. Yeah. Well, this will probably be viewers' worst experience with Hangouts yet. And now it's not coming back. Okay, let's see if we can get Janice back now.
Bonjour. Et bienvenue à l'Université d'Ottawa. Well,
not coming. Ah, crap. Okay, bear with me a minute longer, folks. I'm trying to get Janice back on the phone here.
Et bienvenue à l'Université.
No, she didn't hang up her phone. Janice's phone is still... I'm going to write it in here. Write in to Janice if she sees this to hang up her phone. Okay. Let's try that again.
Bonjour et bienvenue à...
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, it's Kyle forwarded to the university or something right now. Every time I call your number, Janice, the university is picking up. Oh, maybe I'm calling the wrong number. That could be my fault. Hold on, I'm trying again. Okay, calling through. Hello. Okay, I'm getting a ringtone. Here we go.
Hey, hi, Steve.
Hey. Okay, I'm going to try and not touch anything right now because everything I touch or click on just screws me up.
Okay.
Okay. So we were going to talk about, first off, what's the next topics coming up on the Fiamengo file.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would just like to say to everybody who's had the patience to hang in there, we're happy to be back. And I'm seeing jokes and everything. We're happy to be back. Sorry for the long period of non-production. I was moving to Vancouver, and Steve was doing a lot of things, and so we had quite a gap there. But we're back in full force now. We're really looking forward to doing a lot more videos. There's so many things happening, and so much to talk about. So we've got a lot of things planned. Steve is actually planning a really major video in the next week. He'll tell you a bit about that. And he's also thinking about a documentary film, a really exciting one about the history of feminism. And I'm going to do a lot of my regular kind of things. We're aiming to produce a lot of, I guess, relatively short, shareable content, looking at, the obvious lies and hypocrisy and harms caused by feminism. But one of the things that we also want to do is really get into the history of feminism, because I think so many of us have this idea, and I had this idea myself until a few years ago, that feminism had this egalitarian beginning when it really had some noble goals, and it really was in some sense about equality, and then it just went wrong at some point, and it went off the rails. But actually, the more and more, the more one looks into the history of feminism, the more it seems that wasn't the case, and that right from the very beginning it was corrupt, it was hypocritical. There was a fundamental contradiction actually between two different versions of feminism, both of which were always operating at the same time. One, a kind of sentimental idea about how women are wonderful, women can do no wrong. The other, a political version, whereby it was claimed that women were at least as good as men at anything, and that in any endeavor where women were underrepresented, it was because of sexism. And yet, in cases where you could point out that women had an advantage over men, it was never accepted by feminists that there should be equality, for instance, in the number of women, incarcerated in prison, for example. So there was always these simultaneous, that in any situation, women are at least as good as men or better, and therefore we must have equal representation in all good things that women want to be involved in, but in other things like the fact that men die earlier, the fact that men's diseases are not investigated by health practitioners, the fact that many, many more men are arrested, charged, found guilty, incarcerated. All of a sudden, feminists aren't interested in equality at all. They're interested in female innocence and purity. So, and that's been there from the beginning, from the 19th century. And so one of the things that I want to do is a mini-series on feminist foremothers, talking about the various ways that all of these kinds of contradictions and incoherencies were right there in feminism from the 19th century and through the second wave and right up to the present. So sorry, that was very long, was too long, but.
Yeah, that was a really good description. I was actually trying to find your number to delete it here, but I can't even find a way to delete a message on here.
It doesn't matter.
But it's, a lot of viewers are really preoccupied about that. So we'll have to just let that go for now, viewers. Yeah, just to touch base on that video will be about an hour long. It's a fairly long one, and it deals with the Seneca Falls Convention, which it really marks the start of feminism, certainly in the West, in the U.S. Would that be right, Janice?
Sorry, I was reading something on the screen, so I didn't even hear what you said. 1848, what you're saying, the beginning of feminism in the U.S. was 1848, Seneca Falls? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So what this video is going to touch on is the claims made at the Seneca Falls Convention, and with relation to what history really represents with respect to those very claims made by feminists. And if you look at the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments, which was the main topic of this upcoming video, you'll see that they started right from day one with their presentation of men as evil oppressors of women through the very beginning of feminism. So yeah, we're hoping to do a series on this, so to present both what the actual conditions for men and women were like throughout history, leading up to the beginning of feminism, and then trace feminism through to today with its various different transformations, which aren't so, I mean, from my view, the transformations of feminism aren't so big as the feminists like to say they are. They still emphasize oppressing women and an evil patriarchy. How would you respond to that, Janice? Yeah, well, and certainly the idea of female purity, it's still there. And this is something that we're exploring in an upcoming video too. The incredible difficulty that our culture has imagining that women have a dark side, imagining that women can actually have bad intentions. So much when you see a woman who's done something wrong, the belief is that she's been nabbed by the misogyny of her culture because she's seen so much abuse, because a man has treated her badly. We have so much trouble actually recognizing that women are human, and therefore women are capable of evil. And it's amazing that a movement that pretends it's about equality isn't even interested in addressing that obvious misconception. And so if feminists really cared at all about equality, they would be arguing against the notion that there's a sort of fundamental purity to women, and yet they don't. And also, of course, that many men believe that. And so it means that a lot of men support laws whereby women are advantaged, and women can get away with doing all sorts of terrible things right up until murder, because we can't believe in female evil. So that's something, it's something that I really want to hammer away at over the next little while.
And that's an upcoming Fiamengo file, right, Janice?
Yeah. And I want to do a whole series. I have a friend who sent me hundreds and hundreds of articles, links to accounts, of women who've done terrible things. We call it the Bad Girls series. I want to do a whole series on the way our culture can't face the reality of female evil, even the fact that it could be a possibility.
Maybe viewers could comment in what they think about this idea that there's a presumption in our culture that there isn't a dark side to female nature. There's no problem envisaging our culture's presumption of a dark side of male behavior. I mean, that's the only side that seems to be analyzed by feminists. But folks, does that ring with viewers, that there is a presumed no dark side to female nature?
It's also the thing that I think distinguishes the men's rights or men's issues movement from the feminist movement is that there is no men's rights advocate who would claim that men are innocent, or that men are all good. Everybody knows, of course, yeah, men have a dark side. They also have an incredibly good side. Men contribute a great deal to our society, but we recognize that there are certain masculine tendencies or faults, hyper-aggression, hyper-competitiveness, perhaps, though competitiveness can be a good thing too, the tendency to violence. We recognize those things. Civilization has been built around recognizing them and dealing with them, and if possible, channeling masculine energy towards good ends. We used to be able to recognize the evil in female nature. It was there in lots of religious traditions and in traditional cultures, but now suddenly, we can't anymore. We're not allowed even to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a fairly new thing, brought about really by the efforts of feminist propaganda, possibly, because throughout the literature, there's always some fairly evil characters, female characters and male characters, and even in the Greek mythology, right, Janice?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in the Bible, we have all sorts of stories that are about the recognition of the dark side to femininity. And, but if you bring up the notion of toxic femininity, what you get from a lot of feminists, most women in fact, is some discussion about how women feel constrained or compelled, to be nice. And that's what they call toxic femininity, is the patriarchy forcing women to, say yes, or forcing women to be passive or to smile too much or to be too compliant. But those aren't the things that we need to be able to talk about. Those aren't the things that can destroy people's lives. And so it's startling, the resistance that one encounters in our society, just trying to talk about the fact that women do bad things and that women have evil impulses, just as men do. So I think that's something worth really exploring in our video series.
So when do you figure the first of this series, Women Don't Have a Dark Side, will be coming out?
That should be next week. I mean, it depends on you, of course, because you're the one that produces the videos. But the script is pretty much finished, or very close to being finished. It's going to be called "The Women Are Wonderful Effect." It all began with an article that I saw a little while ago. It's about a person who killed the grandmother in the case. And the reason I'm not using a gendered pronoun, is that the person is a trans woman. There's a picture of her in the newspaper article about her murder of her grandmother that shows she's clearly a female presenting person. And yet in the newspaper article about her act of murder, the article changes her back into a man. And it's such a clear instance, because this would never happen if it was something else, if this were an activist, criticizing Trump for something. She would be a trans woman and she would be identified as such clearly. But because this was an example of murder, the journalist writing about it turned her into a man. And it's so clear that it's because it's a cultural script. We don't think of murderers as women, especially women killing members of their own family, although the stats clearly show that when it comes to abusing the elderly or abusing siblings or indeed abusing children, women are at least equally represented, in some cases overrepresented. Still, we don't see them in those terms. So that is the way it starts. And when I look at the ramifications of the Women Are Wonderful effect in all sorts of arenas of law, social practice, and public policy. So yeah, that one's an exciting one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with on that topic as well. There's another series, or was this the same series, on Feminist Mothers, or did you touch on that already?
Yeah, the foremothers. That's a whole
Foremothers,
other
right.
issue. That's a whole other series where I want to look at individual feminist foremothers going all the way back to the 19th century, maybe even the 18th century, and also looking at a lot of the second wavers because we just don't know that much. You know, we have an idea of them, but it's one of it's one of my areas of expertise. I spent years reading all of these people. You know, the Andrea Dworkins and the Catherine McKinnons and the Robin Morgans, and there's so many others. And we have a very vague idea about them. And yet, I don't think that many people have actually spent a lot of time reading all their stuff. So I want to do some short, shareable videos about some of the more outlandish theories that these women developed back in the 1960s, 1970s, that then got translated into academic discourse in the women's studies programs, that were celebrated, that were affirmed, that spread throughout academia, and that then became mainstream in our society. And we see them now, like things like, affirmative consent, ideas about the damage caused by the male gaze, all sorts of crazy ideas of toxic masculinity itself. These ideas started as wacky theories in academia, then they spread into the wider society and they've been given sanction. And so I want to do a whole series of videos about which feminists were responsible for these ideas and where exactly in their works you can find these ideas.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to that too. A couple of quick comments came up that I happened to grab as I whisked by here. Somebody said we're aware of rainbow poopy controversy. I don't know what that refers to. Do you have any idea, Janice?
I don't know. Anyone who would like to write me at my email address if there are specific controversies or ideas that you want me to look at. I've written me and I haven't written back. I try to respond to everybody who writes me, but I can't always. Sometimes I just get too many and then the message gets buried.
Okay, hold on.
If you want to write me at Fiamengo@uottawa.ca with ideas, that would be fine.
Okay. I got that all wrong. Rainbow poppy. It whisked by there, so I guess from that there's a poppy of multicolors out there. Somehow red wasn't good enough for everybody.
Oh, okay. So poppy is now, there's a rainbow version in order to honor LGBTQ. Is it that sort of thing?
I'm guessing. I can only guess.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised that I mean, the attack on men, I interpret it as part of the attack in general on anything to do with Western culture, Western civilization, and honoring the war dead, honoring those who fought for our countries is something that's verboten, according to those who would have us believe that there is nothing good about our civilization, nothing worth honoring. So I wouldn't be surprised if the idea is that we should turn our attention to something else entirely.
Yeah. Have you heard of Lex Oppia? OPPIA.
No. I don't know. I didn't even hear that properly.
Rex Oppia, OPPIA. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of stuff out here that's going on that escapes our attention.
I am not plugged in. I'm not a plugged in person, unfortunately. I don't have enough hours in the day to keep up with everything. But if that's a Roman law, which I think I saw JGG said, send it along to me. I would be happy to know. I'm always happy to be enlightened about things I don't know anything about, and there's a lot.
Huh. Okay. He says it has something to do with gynocentrism.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. Let me know for sure.
Cultural appropriation. Yeah. David says rainbow poppy is cultural appropriation. I suppose everything is cultural appropriation at some point in time. Anything else you want to touch on today, Janice?
No, I really just wanted to say that, I've got a lot of things going that I'm working on, and I know you do too. And so I think this was just an opportunity to say to people, sorry, we've been silent for a time, and we're really looking forward to producing as many good videos as we can, inviting people to support us financially. We don't want to hammer that home too much. It's awkward to ask for money, but Steve does, I want to say this personally, Steve does a lot of work to try to produce really high quality videos. He spends a lot of hours doing it. For me, this is kind of a labor of love, writing the scripts. I couldn't possibly post these videos. I'm a complete technophobe. Steve works really hard. And so I'd like it if he were fully supported financially in that. So we don't want to, we did contemplate at one point putting things behind a paywall, that kind of thing. That got some fairly negative reactions, I think, understandably so. And we really do want to be part of the public conversation on these issues, advocating for men and boys, talking about the harms of feminism, talking about the hypocrisies and incoherencies of feminist ideology, all that. We want to be out there, and but we'd love to be supported too. So this is a little pitch for that.
Yes.
Hope it's not too heavy-handed. Always feel embarrassed asking for money.
Neither one of us is particularly good at fundraising and asking for money. Unfortunately, YouTube has clamped down on us pretty severely with demonetization. And for those of you who have been following all of the videos, or the majority of these videos, I'd be hard-pressed to find a reason in just about any of our videos as to why they're not suitable for advertisers, other than the fact that we undermine the cultural narrative. And that's a pretty big sin in this time, in a culture dominated by feminism. But having said that, yeah, we do, that's one of the reasons we do have to beg for money, for support. YouTube has pretty much taken 90% of our ad revenue off the board, and Patreon has driven most of our supporters away after the, I keep forgetting the fellow's name, who was kicked off of Patreon. It was
Carl Benjamin, I think, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, Sargon.
Sargon, yeah.
Yeah.
And that Subscribestar just never picked up. Haven't got anything off of Subscribestar to speak of yet. And so one of the things we do want to do with support, and we will be specifically asking for some money for this project, because it's going to take a lot to move forward, is we want to bring the real history of feminism, and including a presentation of what men and women's realities were before and after feminism, to a documentary in theaters. Now that's a stretch goal for us, but it would be a feature documentary, and you're going to get a taste of the kind of material that will be in it on next week's video coming out, the hour-long video that we talked about earlier about Seneca Falls. And that's Seneca Falls, again, is the Declaration of Sentiments, which basically kicked off the feminist movement in 1848. And it's nothing like you would think. And the reason for starting with this video was that a lot of people, even anti-feminists and support men's rights activists, seem to still believe that there was a perfect history, a perfect time of feminism, or a valid period of feminism when they weren't hating men and they were dealing with actual, real social issues. But when we look at it, what happened at that time and in the situation for women, all of the issues they're claiming about are fantasies for the most part. Now, I may be exaggerating a little bit. There may be a few claims here and there, but it's certainly not what feminism makes itself out to be, and there's no secret to people watching here. I may be going on a little too long on that. Janice, do you want to jump in on me on that?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it's a really interesting video, and the idea of making a documentary about the real history of men and women before and after feminism it's really exciting and useful. And that's the thing that I find so frustrating now, is that we don't know very much about our history. And I have to admit, even, I did a PhD in English literature that was historically based. And there were so many things, even about the specific period that I studied, which was the 19th century, mainly North America, mainly Canada, actually, but Canada was always influenced by the United States. So, but there were all sorts of things. I studied women involved in the suffrage movement, the movement, to extend the vote to women, and I had no idea that men had the vote for such a short period of time, that it had been this vanishingly small window between the time that most men had the vote and the awarding of the right to vote to women. And of course, that women had none of the responsibilities, none of the obligations that men had to undertake in order to qualify for the vote, specifically, the obligation to be available to fight for their country if necessary. I never even considered that, even while I was studying women who were agitating for the right for women to vote. And I was reading newspapers of the time and everything, but somehow that very simple, basic fact of history escaped me, and none of my professors were interested, or I'm not even sure that they necessarily knew about it either. So, I think now we're in this vulnerable position where we really don't know anything about the past, and we keep having it drummed into us. The one thing my students all thought they did know for sure was that women had a terrible time, and men had it great, and they were just having a wonderful, easy ride of it, and women were slaving away and were oppressed. And so to actually figure out what the actual material conditions of life were at various periods in the past is crucial to understand where we are now and where we're going. And so much of feminism's claims rest on this idea that even if feminism has gone too far and is now, advantaging women over men, that doesn't matter, that's justified, because the whole history of the past has been the history of male privilege. And yet, if you look at the past, you see that isn't the case. And so I think this is one of the directions that we want to go, while continuing to talk about, contemporary issues, obviously, because some of them are so juicy and interesting. But it's one of the big areas that we want to explore.
Well, it's interesting, Janice. I'm reading some of the comments as we talk about this very topic, and several people on this comment board actually implied, at least, that feminism did accomplish things, and that at one point it was a good movement. And I think all I could say is, folks, watch the video when it comes out next week. I'm just going to comment on this, Janice. Somebody made the point here that feminism was responsible for making rape in marriage illegal. Was rape ever legal in marriage?
Rape was not legal in marriage. I think that it was understood that the technical definition of rape could not occur in marriage, but any man who forced his wife, at least in Western culture, I don't know about outside of the West, a man who forced his wife and was violent and used sexual violence against her was always understood as an abusive man.
Okay.
I mean, Karen Strawn has done so much stuff about this, and about specific instances in history where, when it was known that a man had been sexually violent towards his wife, that he was brutally punished, that he was shunned by his community, that there were sanctions brought against him, and the idea that a man could do anything he wanted to his wife is counter to fact. And that's a really interesting point. I'd love to do a video on that. So I thank the person who brought that up. I'll get the factual material together about that, because that's a very important myth, I think, that feminism has perpetrated.
it says, one fellow says here, he said that it was wrong, making rape in marriage wrong, not illegal. So I maybe read that wrong. He's also saying that it wasn't illegal in Canada, the USA, but it was actually legal for the husband to force a woman to have sex with him in Europe. So have a look at that, Janice. I'll be really excited to see what you come up with under that. I find it hard to believe that forcing a woman to have sex was ever tolerated in any Western culture. I'll find that very, very hard to believe. Other people have brought up the issue of the vote as proof that feminists have accomplished something, that women being allowed to own property. Feminists were responsible for that. Of course, we know that that's not true. Women have been allowed to own property from before that.
Property long before feminism. Yeah.
And another one said that feminists stood for freedom and liberalism at some point in the past, and that he supported feminism at that point. You feel free to comment now on any of those comments that brought out here.
I mean, these are huge topics, and I don't have all the answers for sure, but I mean, I think there has to be a distinction made between individuals who might have identified as feminists and feminism as a movement overall. You know, what it agitated for in society, what kinds of laws it promoted, and that sort of thing. Certainly one can find individuals who say egalitarian things if you're looking back through the history of feminism. But if you look at feminism overall and what it agitated for and what it achieved in society, you can see that it was always based, I think it's fair to say, it was always based on resentment and grievance mongering. It always focused on male evil, and I know this particularly in relation to the Canadian first wave feminists, the suffragists. There was always this strain of man blaming and this idea that men were responsible for evil, women were the purer sex, they were better, they were more angelic, that they were the innocent victims of history. That was there right from the beginning, and that notion that even if the laws were turned against men, even if men suffered as a result of particular feminist initiatives, that was perfectly acceptable because the whole history of human culture was the history of women being abused by men. That lie, which I think is still there at the fundamental heart of feminism, was there from the very beginning in feminism. That's where I think we see the greatest weakness and inaccuracy of feminism.
Terrific. Well, there's certainly some folks here who do believe that in this kind of early feminism was an honorable movement idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were probably some good things. Let's not imagine that the whole thing was evil. There were certainly individual women who had particular objectives in mind that we would agree with, but there were aspects to the movement. It always exaggerated the reality of male-female relations. I think that is absolutely undeniable. It presented an idea of history that uniformly saw men abusing women, and that simply never was the case. There were some aspects of women's condition that were difficult. There were also all sorts of ways in which men always had the harder row to hoe. Men were always the ones who had to sacrifice in war. Feminists had almost nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
There were all areas of society where it was clear that women had certain privileges and men were willing to grant those privileges to women, and women were never interested in surrendering those privileges. So I think, that's what needs to be recognized now, because we still see that going on in feminism today. And so it's useful to know that that was there in the origins of the movement, and that it hasn't just gone off the rails in the last 20 years.
Yes, indeed. In fact, the Declaration of Sentiments basically states right out that women men have oppressed women throughout history. Yeah, and that's so that's not a new development in feminism after the start of that's the very first mothers claiming that men have always oppressed women.
And anybody who thinks that the that gynocentrism and female supremacy are only aspects of feminism as it developed in the late 20th century should really read E. Belfort Bax's The Fraud of Feminism. That was published in 1913, but he'd also written a lot of articles earlier than that. He was a British essayist and socialist. He was writing in the 1880s about gynocentrism and feminism, and he made the point that in all sorts of ways, in policy, in law, in social practice, there were all sorts of ways already that women had specific social advantages over men, certain privileges, that they were not convicted for crimes that they committed, that in cases of domestic assault, in cases of infanticide, in cases of murder even, that the courts treated women with a leniency they never showed to men. So there were always areas of female privilege, and he lays that out in stunning detail. And it sounds as if he's talking about, 100 years later.
Can I have that name so I can write it into the comments here, the author?
And the name is E, the initial E, Belfort, Belfort.
Okay.
Bax, The Fraud of Feminism.
BACKS?
BAX. I'll write it.
BAX, okay.
Yeah, E. Belfort Bax, The Fraud of Feminism, 1913, but he'd written a bunch of essays on the same subject decades before that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, we both got it in there.
Yeah, there it is, yeah. And it's an eye-opener. I really encourage everyone to read it.
That's great, Janice. Thanks for the link. And I want to thank a fellow named Krusty here. Krusty Canuck, I think is his name, gave us a generous donation just a few minutes back. Thank you very much, Krusty.
So I guess what we want to say generally, we should probably wind this down because we were only planning to talk for half an hour. We don't want to bend everybody's ear forever, but we don't have all the answers. To, the history of humanity is incredibly complex, and I definitely don't have all the answers. But we are looking forward to exploring all of these kinds of issues, and really delighted that we have an audience interested in the material. We feel humble and excited about the opportunity to explore these issues more. I really feel that. I'm so looking forward to writing more scripts and also doing some more videos, getting out there on video, since most of the stuff I've been doing lately is just audio. And really looking forward to, somebody says open and honest conversation is important. That's I just glanced at that. That's exactly it. And it seems that in our society today, it's become less and less possible to have these kinds of conversations. And I couldn't have them at university. There's been a lockdown on open conversation since the 1990s at least. I just tried to give a talk. I was invited by the UBC Students for Freedom of Expression to give a talk at the University of British Columbia, which was my alma mater, and I was prevented from speaking there. The UBC administration thought I was too hot to handle, and I wanted to talk there about all the ways that academic feminism is the academic possibilities and the life possibilities of young men at university and in general. And it's now become impossible to talk about that in a public forum. So we're living at a really incredible time. I'm flabbergasted every time I read a newspaper or watch something on mainstream television and see the naked contempt for men, the malice towards men, the outrageous calls for violence are becoming more and more acceptable now against men, particularly against white men perhaps, but all men are a legitimate target for feminists. And yeah, it boggles my mind. So I'm really glad there's an audience of people who want to oppose that and want to have honest conversations.
Well, those are very good points, Janice, and I especially like the point you made that human history is very, very complex.
Yeah, well.
And that's the reason I like that point so much, is that that's one of the things that feminism tries to hide. It tries to reduce history to a very simple idea of men oppressing women. This is the biggest idea they push, and all the truth of history gets sacrificed to that idea when it's inconvenient for them. So, and the other idea I like you putting out there is that the idea that you are too hot to have at a university, and I mean your idea is too hot to touch, is mind-boggling to me. Yeah, because all of your work is backed up. It's all impeccably rational and backed up with history and facts and citations. Incredible that you can't have. The universities have become the opposite of their purpose today. The opposite. So I also want to point out, thank you very much to Fillerator for another generous donation coming through a few minutes ago. I'm sorry I'm very slow at acknowledging these things as things move on here, but thank you very much to Fillerator. And Janice, have you got anything else you want to add in here before we call it a night?
Not really. I just again want to say I'm so happy to be able to communicate with people. Steve and I have talked about trying to do a bit more in the way of live streaming, to be sort of more available to people who watch our videos. I'm always hesitant because I hate myself in live situations. I always say something really stupid, and then I kick myself for 5 days afterwards for muddling some statement or getting some fact wrong or whatever, getting someone's name wrong. But we want to try to be more available generally, and to keep in touch with people, and to hear what you're interested in, and to hear your feedback and criticisms and all that kind of thing.
Well, thank you.
So that's what we want to try to do. We're not going to pledge to have live streams, I don't think, every week or anything like that, but a little bit more. And like I say, if people want to email either to Steve, to his channel contact, or to my email, Fiamengo@uottawa.ca, if there are things you want me to take note of. I can't promise that I will necessarily be able to address them, because not all subjects are ones I feel really confident addressing, but I'm always really interested in what people want me to take note of. And in fact, I depend on email friends who send me interesting articles and alert me to things that are going on. It helps me to make the videos more current and more relevant. So looking forward to a year of talking about men's issues and feminism and cultural craziness.
Thank you so much, Janice. And we haven't written off, if I can be so bold as to say, the idea of a weekly live stream, because somebody was making that point. They'd like to see it weekly. I don't think we've written the idea off, but we certainly want to be more present to our viewers, both in prepared materials and in a live basis. So we're looking at different ways to make that happen. And I'm sorry for the hiccups in technology in getting this one going today. But Janice, you are also, I have to say, you're too hard on yourself. You do brilliantly in live streams, and as we do more, you'll loosen up even more, I'm sure. People love to hear you.
No, never happened, Steve. I'm terrible, but yeah.
I just
People
like to,
are generally very patient.
I'd just like to point out we've got another generous donation from Sabra Dali, and I suspect most of these names are not real names. Certainly Fillerator is not a full real name. But thank you very much to Sabra Dali for another generous donation coming through here today. So with nothing else to say, Janice, we shall sign off for this week.
I want to say thanks to everybody, and looking forward to a great year, and thank you for your support.
Yes, I can double that comment. Thank you very much for your support and your generosity today, folks. Look for us shortly for another live stream, and you should see at least 2 new videos coming through next week. One on the topic of do women not have a dark side, or the denial of a women's dark side in our culture. And the other one on the Seneca Falls Convention, the Declaration of Sentiments. And that's a long one. It'll be a full hour long, but I think you'll enjoy it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and a good night.
Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to turn this off. I'm just going to close the window. Maybe it'll shut. I don't know, honestly.
Oh,
they've changed